You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. There's a lot to dig into, I'm afraid. It starts with a little bit of breaking news out of the Middle East. Israel has begun a ground offensive into Gaza City. Right now, from what we know, and sources are a little bit varied, but I was able to confirm, based on at least two sources on the ground, that several groups of Israeli soldiers have been seen moving into different city blocks inside of Gaza. I believe we have one clip ready that we can confirm is real of explosions getting closer to certain regions in Gaza City. Let's roll that clip. By the way, for those listening, that is an artillery round. That is what an artillery round sounds like incoming. That's not a rocket. You can see the skyline in the distance. Now, as of right now, here is what we know. We are aware that a few hours ago, President Trump did post a particular tweet, or truth, I should say. And I want to see if we can make sure we get that up. Yes, President Trump said, "I have just read a news report that Hamas has moved the hostages above ground to use them as human shields against Israel's ground offensive. I hope the leaders of Hamas know what they're getting into if they do such a thing. This is a human atrocity, the likes of which few people have ever seen before. Don't let this happen, or all bets are off. Release the hostages now." Okay, so we're going to make sure that we bring you more information on that as it breaks. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, as well as the acting National Security Advisor, was in Gaza yesterday, as well as in Israel in general. He is now back in the United States. Axios is also confirming that Israel has launched a ground offensive to occupy Gaza City. Then again, that's Axios, so perhaps take that with slightly more a grain of salt. And we're going to explain why here in just a bit. By the way, it should also be noted that Israel has been building up certain security measures along the border with Gaza City. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. I got to see the aid going into Gaza as quickly as the trucks could get in. Trucks that were guarded by Israeli Defense Forces reached those who needed the food. Trucks that were not guarded were almost always captured at gunpoint by Hamas, who would then drive those off with individuals on top of the semi-trucks that was reminiscent of kind of the rebels in India who captured the trains back in the 18 and then 1900s. So we'll bring you updates as we have them. We have a couple of people that are feeding us information in on the ground. I would like to point out one thing really quickly. There are a couple of prominent photographs showing essentially mushroom cloud explosion style photos in Gaza City. Take those with a grain of salt. As we absolutely should remember, over the last couple of major military movements, whether you're talking about Eastern Europe, which we will get to, whether we're talking about heinous crimes and tragedies like the shooting in Minneapolis, suspected shooters on various college campuses, or we're talking, of course, about the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk. There are individuals who are sitting there ready to farm all of the engagement that they can off of breaking news like this to get a photo that they created in AI, something that they have pulled from incidents or actions months and years ago into this conversation. For example, photos from wars in Africa, as well as the Russo-Ukrainian war, have been used consistently in the Middle Eastern Israeli-Gaza war. So keep that in mind. We have to move on to other news at the moment. Mainly here on the domestic side, President Trump has signed the executive order to deploy the Tennessee National Guard into Memphis. Here was Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, when the president was signing this today.
President Trump's
initiative here in Washington, D.C., is important to understand, is the most successful anti-crime initiative in American history. But just think about it for a second. In 30 days, President Trump put together a team that saw the largest ever violent crime reduction in any city in American history, something that people had not been able to do in 40 years. That is a momentous achievement. And now the president is going to take that same model to Memphis, and as he said, more cities after that. The team that President has put together has no equal today or anywhere in American history. I think what's happening here is that what the president has done is made clear. The power of federal law enforcement that was used for the last 4 years to harass and attack conservatives, to harass and attack Christians.
By the way, this is true whether you're talking about the IRS, whether you're talking about the Federal Bureau of Investigation, whether you're talking about the National Guard used in places like in Minnesota, in which Governor Tim Walz used the National Guard to ensure that people were staying in their houses during COVID. The law enforcement apparatus has, in fact, been used against Americans by and large during the last administration. Trump's move to put the National Guard in Washington, D.C., this isn't news to you. It's been wildly successful because no one wants to commit crimes in front of 3 strapping dudes from Georgia in National Guard uniforms. It's just not something that's likely to happen. And as a result, crime plummeted. The left responded by saying, well, you have all these red states like Tennessee. You've got Governor Bill Lee in Tennessee, who's been on the show, who has deployed National Guard troops into Washington, but Memphis is like one of the worst, most crime-ridden cities in the country. And that is true. And so now Trump is deploying the National Guard to Memphis. And the irony is not lost on me that President Trump, perhaps more than anyone, has an uncanny ability to get individuals in a room who may not agree with him on certain points and policies, and then force them to explain why what Trump is doing is correct on the spot. And here's Governor Bill Lee being put on that spot.
First of all, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your commitment for federal resources to the great city of Memphis. And it is a great city, and it has a great history and a great legacy. And we are very hopeful and excited about the prospect of moving that city forward. I've been in office 7 years. I'm tired of crime holding the great city of Memphis back. And I have spoken today with the director of the U.S. Marshals, with the director of the FBI, with General Bondi. We realize that this effort of multi-agencies that will combine the work of the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the local police departments.
So you've got the full federal and state forces in Tennessee actually tackling crime. This is the real dirty secret that was always going to be made pretty clear, that you would need a hard reset, that just soft voting policies of, well, we're going to let police slowly address the problem. No, you do in fact need a bottle of shock when the pool is filled with gunk. You do in fact need to clean out the gunk if you are going to make decent progress. Now, this brings us to what's currently going on in Utah. So I want to make 2 things really clear before we have to send the radio crew, regrettably, over to commercial and we continue on the live stream for a minute or 2. As far as the Utah investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk is concerned, I have never seen any kind of statewide investigation in which an individual is being charged on state crimes in which the governor has handled the press conferences. I've never seen it. When there is an individual who has committed a heinous crime, it is almost always the state's attorney general who then goes out in front of the cameras, who then goes on national media if necessary, and communicates things. It is unorthodox that I have not yet seen in any large way. I mean, of course, there are clips that could have passed my notice. I have not seen Utah's attorney general on camera. I've seen Governor Spencer Cox. And we're not going to get right now into some of the details as to why that's, particularly interesting just yet. Radio crew, sorry, we have to send you guys to the commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, as to updates from this investigation, we are receiving a lot of information as soon as it breaks, and there are 2 reasons why. Number 1, because the Department of Justice cannot afford for this not to be completely and utterly transparent. After the concerning rollout of the Epstein file release back in February that then set a predicate for a lot of headaches for the administration on that matter. Now, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it is incumbent on this administration. It is crucial for this administration to handle this investigation flawlessly, not the least because of the major national impact that it has. Now, aside from describing the updates on the investigation and kind of the political aspect of it, which matters far less than those who were involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk being brought to justice, it now appears that Tyler Robinson, the alleged, I say alleged for legal reasons, the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk, apparently confessed to killing Kirk on his Discord messages to a trans Antifa Discord server group that he was a part of. This is a major, major problem for those in Antifa, and it should be. And the reason it is a major problem for those over in Antifa is that if someone confesses a murder to you and you go, well, I don't really need to report that to anybody, that's illegal. If you have reason to believe that someone has committed a violent crime, they tell you, I committed the violent crime, and then you keep that to yourself, based on prior conversations that you had, you can be charged with an accessory to murder. You can be charged with obstruction of justice, depending on state statutes. I know in Indiana that's a thing, which is where I'm broadcasting from. I know in states like Ohio, in Florida, in California, you can absolutely be charged. So now we move from, is it likely, is it possible, is it a possibility out there that Antifa groups or transgender individuals or local transgender advocacy groups were a possible part of planning this, to it is very likely they were a part of it. Now the FBI and the federal government, along with the Utah State Police Department, as well as the governor's office, determines how involved they were. And this brings us to the matter of Tyler's transgender boyfriend. So first of all, he's a dude who is transitioning to a girl or whatever, and is at the moment cooperating with federal authorities. This has been trotted out everywhere, all over, he's cooperating with federal authorities, so this means that the trans people are the really good guys in this story. No. From what we can glean so far, the former pastor of the individual, the pastor the family knew for years, recognized Tyler. Tyler's dad, turned him into police. And after the police went to the transgender live-in boyfriend of the shooter, that's when the transgender individual started cooperating with police. So this is no hero, I'm sorry. You waited until they came to you. There's other questions that will be and should be asked. And this brings us over to the other pieces of information that we know and that we don't know yet. Right now, there are messages that have been sent in which Tyler appears to have communicated to get his hunting rifle that he used to assassinate Charlie Kirk dropped off and or picked up. We don't know what those messages lead to. We don't know to whom those messages are sent yet. It could be possible that the FBI is still hunting for a particular group of individuals. And that brings us over to some very concerning attitudes over from the crew at Discord, who up until now has been ready to cooperate with federal investigators and appears to have kind of clammed up, according to reports from several media outlets. That's not going to fly either. And from that point forward, you have several investigators as well as congressmen calling for measures to be taken against Antifa. We have to bring the radio crew back from commercial. We're going to talk about it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So today, President Trump was asked after several members of Congress suggested that Antifa be labeled a domestic terrorist organization, which, by the way, at this point, the answer is yes, obviously. So you have your normal crew running around right now saying, well, Antifa is more an idea than a political organization. That's a lie. There are Antifa chapters all over this country. as real as any other club or organization chapter. They hold training exercises on how to kill law enforcement. They hold training exercises on how to kill individuals of political status and influence at large events. Say, how do you know this? Because we just aired the footage of one of the guys who was caught leading the training exercises involved with an ambush of Border Patrol and Immigration Customs Enforcement agents down in Texas. Andy No, who's been on the show several times to talk about this transgender Antifa group, this Trantifa group of advocates, provocateurs, saboteurs, and assassins, has become a serious problem in the United States. By the way, to be clear, this should have been an issue dealt with by the Federal Bureau of Investigation all the way back in 2014 and 15, back when Antifa groups started burning down swaths of Portland. But I mean, it's Oregon, so you can guess how the governor handled that. President Trump today on whether or not he would sign some kind of a measure on Antifa being labeled a domestic terror organization.
Given with all that's going on with Charlie Kirk's assassination and the left-wing violence going on, do you have plans, and actually this is a great opportunity with all these, do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%. And others also, by the way. But Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can pick up?
There are other groups, yeah. There are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about that have been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes, what they're doing with it.
He is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. That there are organizations, and by the way, Vice President Vance, whom I am not, when hosting for the Charlie Kirk show today, did a phenomenal job of explaining how organizations operated by the Ford Foundation, the George Soros Foundation, his Open Society Project, have funneled millions, tens of millions of dollars, not just into these particular groups the President of the United States is talking about, but also media outlets and foreign propaganda, by the way, which is channeled into the United States unfettered. One of these examples is of Swiss billionaire Hans-Georg Weiss, who pumps millions, billions of dollars into this country to all of these nonprofit outlets that just seem to always, paint certain sides of the aisle in certain ways. They all seem to carry the same awkwardly pro-foreign and anti-American messaging. And I do believe that it is incumbent on Congress, on the FBI, on the Department of Justice to get this solved. Now, along those lines, this brings into a lot of comments from a lot of people. We're going to dig into those. So there is a huge movement right now around the country to fire those from especially publicly facing positions who have celebrated openly the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the left, and from the media atmosphere over to the progressive youths and the angry, overly college educated old white women on the left, they're all, that trifecta, they are very, very mad about this. They are so upset about the Trump administration in the federal government, as well as state governments, hospitals, major corporations, sports teams, public schools all over the country, who are firing people who are openly celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So first of all, it is a good thing objectively for those who celebrate the murder of individuals to be fired. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. Charlie Kirk, not being an elected official, shot for his political beliefs and what he said. When you celebrate that, you are telling everyone around you, I am okay with any of you getting offed if you say something I don't like. That is fundamentally un-American. That is not protected in the civil rights clauses as to protected speech that you can say and not be discriminated against saying and then kicked out from a publicly taxpayer-funded organization, for example, like a public school. However, The First Amendment does apply to this. Now, so what does this mean? But Tony, you said you're for firing, but what does this have to do with the First Amendment? The First Amendment protects you from being prosecuted, even if you as an American citizen say really gross and heinous stuff. You cannot be arrested for on your own social media saying, I'm glad Charlie Kirk is dead, whatever. If you're a disgusting, awful person, you are free to say that. And I will, by the way, defend your right to say so legally, free from legal prosecution. But your employer does not have to hire you if you say those kinds of things at all. Your employer doesn't have to hire you. By the way, it is a very disturbing thing that a lot of these individuals are public teachers, public school teachers, who are open and happy to run out and celebrate the slaughter of an individual or the great crime of speaking. Now, this brings us to a lot of different takes that are trying to be shoved in front of the American people at the same time, because what we've seen so far is an American public that is really in favor of these ghouls being fired from their positions. The media has no idea what to do, and they really haven't had any idea of what to do since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, in which they simultaneously tried to argue Charlie Kirk deserved it, but political violence is bad. This was caused by the rhetoric, but only Republicans need to tone down the rhetoric. And also, no one is celebrating it, but also thousands of people are being fired for celebrating it. So let's talk a little bit about this. NPR, Wired, Reuters have had some very disgusting headlines in how they've tried to cover this. So the best of all of these, believe it or not, is from Wired. Right-wing activists are targeting people for allegedly celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. That's still a really disgusting headline because guess what? There are people openly celebrating, dancing, cheering, yelling, huzzahing Charlie Kirk being dead. There's a video I'm not going to show from a university in Texas in which there is a young black woman running around chanting, all but doing the Russian kicking dance that Charlie Kirk has been murdered, and then saying that y'all are next. There are, in fact, major individuals around this country that are celebrating it. We're going to get to that in just a second. NPR said people are losing jobs due to social media posts about Charlie Kirk. I love that they believe that no one is going to look past that. Reuters had perhaps the most disgusting post about this. Again, Reuters, when they post as news, that's supposed to be just hardline news, no opinion, no adjectives, numbers, data, policies, legal text. And as a news story, Reuters ran, quote, after the fatal shooting of right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk, U.S. Republicans have a warning for Americans. Mourn him respectfully or suffer the consequences. First of all, no. That's not true. As a just a legal standard, that quote isn't said anywhere. No one has said that. Number two, if you are celebrating openly the death of an individual, for, again, in the case of this assassination, you should absolutely be canned. I just don't feel bad. Neither does the rest of America. Now, you do have, while some are trying to claim that no one was celebrating it, sorry, Radio Crew, we have to send you guys to commercial. We'll continue on the live stream, where you should be joining us. Then you won't be interrupted by shenanigans. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. Sorry, as I was saying, while you have, for example, Philip Gorovich from the New York Times, who's just trying to say no one is celebrating it at all. He says, keep seeing and hearing news reports of MAGA fury at people celebrating Kirk's killing. Just now, NPR cited Stephen Miller's outrage about this. But I have yet to see or hear a single example reported of such celebration. Nothing close to Kirk's own vile celebration of Paul Pelosi's hammer attacker. We're going to get to that in a minute. Honestly, the only people who I've seen heard are celebrating Kirk's killing in a loud, assertive public manner are the MAGA folk, who got jacked up at the thought that it meant they could become even more groundlessly savage in their crushing of civil liberties and brutalization of those they oppose. That's the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen. Filth. And on that matter of Paul Pelosi, to make this extremely clear, Paul Pelosi was attacked with a hammer in a weird, possible tryst lover's affair situation. He was not killed. He was not. And by the way, even in that instance, well, we'll have to wait on that for Greg Gutfeld's comment. He articulates that much better, I'd say, producer Nick, regarding Paul Pelosi and also the murder in Minnesota. So By the way, just so that we're on the same page, not only are people celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, they're calling for more. So if we're talking about new media, Destiny, the most popular of leftist streamers today, he's just outright, openly calling for the murder of conservatives. Just outright calling for it.
I think that liberals need to wake up and finally realize that if they're not willing to do it, it will never come down. If you wanted Charlie Kirk to be alive, Donald Trump shouldn't have been president for the second term. Every time he's in office.
I'm sorry, what? If you wanted Charlie Kirk alive, Donald Trump shouldn't have been president for the second term. My God in heaven, help this nation. What a horrible thing to say. Again, the only reason that they killed Charlie Kirk instead of me or instead of you is because Charlie Kirk had been saying it for longer and had a larger audience. That's the only distinction. That is the only distinction between you and the individual slain for public debate. That's it. That is the difference. He's not elected to any office. He had not committed any egregious act, which we're going to talk about in a second. Destiny is the scum of the earth. The scum of the earth. And by the way, here he is making the same excuses for it later on his stream.
Out the crime statistics?
Not exactly like.
You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature.
Yep, there you go. I mean, really. That is the most base, disgusting thing that an individual could say. And he's openly calling for violence at this point. I think that's genuinely, I would say that's worth a visit from the FBI. I'd say that is actual inciting of violence. He's saying conservatives need to be afraid. Why? Why do conservatives need to be afraid to go to events? That's incitement of violence to me. I'm no lawyer, but producer Nick?
The sad fact is to them it makes sense. To them, it makes sense because in their mind, Donald Trump becoming president for a second time was what allowed the violent rhetoric on the right to continue.
Right.
To them, it makes sense that Republicans need to be afraid because we've tried every tactic to convince them with facts and knowledge and understanding. We've been compassionate for so long.
And still, they're doing this stochastic terrorism thing, and that's forcing people to commit suicide. Words are violence. And so therefore, I'm going to fight first so that they don't have the chance to get to me. And that's even the softer side of how they express it. We're going to talk about that with Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and then, of course, Hassan Piker, who the New York Times decided, you know what, he needs a column. Hassan Piker is one of the most loathsome individuals on the face of the earth. He has celebrated the worst of everything. And, well, we're going to have to bring the radio crew back onto stream here in a second. By the way, I'm sorry, I realized there was a small echo on Nick's microphone. We're trying to tweak the microphone settings here. We're going to bring the radio crew back. Don't go anywhere. Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Those over on the radio side, the TV side, and our partners on the live stream. Continuing on, so we have this group of individuals who are openly calling for the most disgusting, clear murder. The New York Times is running this guy named Hassan Piker. He's a major leftist streamer. Here are just some of the things that Hassan Piker, who was given an op-ed in the New York Times, just saying, if I was allowed to debate Charlie Kirk here in a couple of weeks because Charlie wasn't assassinated, here's what I would say. And I'll just, we're talking about who the New York Times is airing. This is some of the things that Hassan Piker has said in the past.
I'm sick and tired of it. Left-wingers, liberals, you need to be showing your opponent's guts on there, okay? You need to be gutting them. You need to be shanking these motherfuckers and letting their intestines just ride on stage.
I just want to make this clear really quick. So when a Republican says, like, you know, Trump gets up and he says, fight, fight, fight. That's considered like a dog whistle for mass violence. Yet Hassan openly says you need to gut them so their intestines spill out onto the floor. And that's just like a cultural phrase, or, you know, it's, hey.
Yeah, the point to make there as well is Twitch as a platform is quite restrictive with some of the stuff you can say word-wise. You will get removed for some very tame words that we've used on the show before.
Yeah.
And that is not restricted at all.
Oh, well, there you go.
Slice him up. Slice him and f***ing dice him. What the f*** is this? Letting their intestines just ride on stage.
Disgusting. There's a lot of more in that particular compilation. We have to keep moving for time's sake. Now, some of the individuals getting fired, I got to say, it's happening to the best of people. And I have special authority to say this because I was fired from Indianapolis Public Schools for the grand crime of saying, hey, we have this document on the inside that tells us explicitly to teach racial discrimination to our students. And then when we're asked about it, we're to read this telemarketer script. And I published that. And it took them 2 months to fire me because that doesn't make any sense to fire someone for that. But again, now those same people who were laughing at the time that I was canned from IPS, now they're losing their jobs. And may I just say, FAFO, a very fine unemployment line to you, specifically to Karen Attia from the Washington Post, who said some really, really, really gross and disturbing things celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the Washington Post, of all places, ended up firing her. And this has, of course, allowed her to go on this brave little, some news. I have been fired from the Washington Post, but my work will continue anyway. Oh, so brave, so stunning, so wow. She wrote in this Substack that all about 3 people have read. My only direct reference to Kirk was one post, his own words on the record, quote, "Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's slot," end quote. Now, here's the problem with that. And Greg Price did a phenomenal job of clipping this and pointing this out. Charlie Kirk never said that. As I've told you on previous shows, if you want to, and I recommend it, go to prior shows and events and speeches of Charlie's and listen to them. Here's what Kirk actually said. This is what she's trying to reference. But like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, doesn't seem to have read the source material.
There is no unity.
Sorry, let me get the right clip here. Little tough. There we go.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise.
So as Kirk continues to explain, that when you openly out there say that the only reason, as Michelle Obama or Joy Reid make the case, the only reason I am where I am is because I am a black woman. Then Kirk said, well, then I'm going to start having questions as a result of what you have claimed about those around me in society. That is what he said. Apparently that's the same thing as saying black women are all stupid. No, I'm not the one who said that the only way you can hire black women is if you have to force yourself to hire black women. My stance on hiring is you can do the job, you got the character, congratulations, you're hired. It was the other side of the aisle which set a standard of we have to have a special number of colors and genders because otherwise they're not going to get hired. But alas, this brings us to Vice President Vance, who made a very apt point. It's the one that I accidentally played a second ago on the matter of why this is a fundamental shift in the United States and why, while there are some in the very few left in the center and those on the left side of the aisle that are saying we need like a dialogue and everyone needs to tone it down and everyone relax. Here's why Vice President Vance makes it extremely clear on Charlie Kirk's show today, that's not happening.
There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment?
That's where Vice President Vance then goes into discussing what I described earlier. By the way, more articulate, and I do reaffirm that just the best looking vice president that our nation has ever had. I think I'm an authority on that one in particular. All right, this brings us over to the line that Vice President Vance used that got a lot of scorn today from one particular class of individuals, because the left is in full retreat in the media space because they've been proven wrong. They said, he's this right-wing MAGA guy, and it turns out actually, no, that's not the case. You photoshopped a bunch of MAGA shirts and hats onto him and were caught. Oh, well, he still grew up in a conservative family. Yeah, his dad's the one that turned him in. Okay, well, you said there was going to be trans people. There's no trans people. Yeah, well, he was a furry, a freak who liked to enjoy sexual intercourse in overly sexualized dog costumes, and was living with his transgender boyfriend thing. So now they're backing up. Oh, no one's celebrating his death. Okay, well, actually, thousands of people are being fired for celebrating it. So they're in full retreat. So now the journalists that are my age, your late millennials here, are running around grasping at any straws that they can. Enter Michael Tracy. Michael Tracy, first and foremost, is a goober who I am not sure if he was given the task to tie his shoes, he could do so without writing at least a 500-word essay about why it was too hard for him. Michael Tracy complained that people like Speaker Mike Johnson and Vice President J.D. Vance and a bunch of Republican lawmakers, as well as people like me, nobody streaming and broadcasting radio guys from around the country, people all over, nobodies and somebodies have said they were a friend to Charlie Kirk and that Charlie Kirk was their friend. He took offense to this. Radio crew, again, I'm sorry, we have to send you to the commercial, oh, that I owned the FCC and could cancel those breaks, or broadcasted back in the NPR days and you didn't need them. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll see you guys here in just a second. So Michael Tracy is complaining. Somehow, Charlie was a friend and brother to every GOP politician and government official in D.C. Mike Johnson was his close friend. Kash Patel was his brother. You know that Kash Patel didn't actually think that Charlie Kirk was his brother, right? Like, that's a figure of speech. Anyway, it says, please, whatever happened to that old saying, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog? There are now grown men complaining that Charlie Kirk had friends. I have never seen this in my entire life. I'm shocked that there are now neckbeard journos all over the interwebs who are upset that people wanted to be friends with Charlie Kirk and not Michael Tracy. And I'm sorry, you know what we actually have? It's been kind of a common theme in the testimonies about the legacy of Charlie Kirk, all the way from nobodies in the middle of nowhere like me to the Vice President of the United States, videos, photos, texts, an actual string of instances that we can show in which we were friends with Charlie Kirk, a fact of which I am eternally grateful that I had the honor of knowing him. And Tracy's upset because he doesn't think people can have lots of friends. Okay, yeah, you got him. That'll show him. So incredible. And I pointed this out. He was very, very salty as well. I'm mocking how every GOP official is proclaiming Charlie to have been a personal friend of theirs, as though the relationship was a deep personal bond rather than transactionally political. Look, Michael, I'm sorry that whenever you have friendships, they're transactional like a prostitute. Some of us have friendships because we're friends. We agree with people. As has been openly stated by Jen Psaki and Jon Stewart after the 2024 election disaster for the Democrats, the right-wing media ecosystem, Victor Davis Hanson comes on this show. Then I go on Scott Jennings' show. Then Scott Jennings goes on Ben Shapiro's show. Then Ben Shapiro goes on Dave Rubin's show. Then Dave Rubin goes on Steven Crowder, and like on and on and on and on, because we believe in what it is that we're doing. And so when I show up on stage, even if it's with an individual who I disagree with on some small matters, I am more than happy to work alongside people whom I believe are working to make America better. I don't have to pay people like a prostitute to do that. Maybe you do. Just saying. And I know that we're not as exciting as Stephen Colbert and the Emmy he won last night. Oh, wait a minute. We are. Because our show dwarfs Stephen Colbert's nightly audience, even after his revival when he was announced that he was going to be fired. So from now on, you tell people to listen to the Tony Kinnett cast. Listened and watched to more than those crappy Emmy Award-winning shows. So, fantastic stuff. This does bring us to the other side of the rhetoric conversation. There is some news about this that really should be paid attention to, because after this news cycle finally does end, there will be individuals like who, I got to tell you, I wasn't expecting Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois to become genuinely one of the worst people in politics. But I tell you what, he beats Newsom and Biden and Obama and all of them to the punch. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Don't go anywhere. Got to bring the radio crew back. It's the Tony Kinnett cast.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIPC.
J.B. Pritzker, who does double time of being a terrible person and a horrific, disgusting slop, he has decided to both simultaneously try to claim that he's never, ever, ever called Republicans Nazis or fascists or anything like that. You know, the kind of rhetoric that got Charlie Kirk assassinated. Well, it turns out that he's, I know, full of lard. Here you go.
Congresswoman, there's a lot of...
Oh, let's see. You got the right clip there. J.B. Pritzker fact check. Maybe that's in 3, maybe? Wrong clip loaded. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can find J.B. Pritzker's brilliant innovations here. There we go.
That is completely false. I have never called Republicans Nazis.
Everything that he has done has been tearing down constitutional democracy. And that's what happened in Nazi Germany. It doesn't take very long to tear apart a constitutional republic. Indeed, the Nazis did it in 53 days. And our democracy is almost as fragile. And we're seeing it right now. The dangers that we saw in Nazi Germany, especially in the earliest days of Nazi Germany, are the dangers that we need to react to now. If we don't, things will get much, much worse.
That clip goes on for like another 30 seconds. And Pritzker just openly saying, well, we got to react now. We got to stop him now. So when you have the new media, you have the old media, you have the Democrat officials that are running around saying Republicans are Nazi fascists, and they're going to kill you. They're going to disappear you. They are going to erase you from existence. Man, I'm not really surprised why that rhetoric has consequences. And to be clear, has he stopped since then? No. Here is J.B. Pritzker, last 48 hours, saying that Trump is threatening illegal immigrants, and it's all over.
As the senator said eloquently, I know that it is sometimes difficult to sit in a room like this and share the challenges that you're going through, but it is so important for me to hear directly from you, to know what it is we could be doing better and what it is that we should be thinking about, and the challenges that you're going through. I think it gives me additional impetus and incentive to try to make things better and do a better job of protecting our people and each and every one of you. So
So you got Pritzker. Oh, well, Trump's threatening illegal immigrants. That's why we have to do a better job of protecting you from them. So nothing like violating federal law. And at the same time, again, the same kind of rhetoric once again. Now, this does bring us to some very big international news on kind of the world at beyond. So first and foremost, the President of the United States posted this afternoon that on his orders, U.S. military forces conducted a second kinetic strike against positively identified extraordinarily violent drug trafficking cartels and narco-terrorists in the Southcom area of responsibility. The strike occurred while these confirmed narco-terrorists were from Venezuela, were in international waters transporting illegal narcotics. Now, he says that this resulted in the deaths of 3 of the terrorists and says, be warned, if you're transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we're hunting you. Correct. Again, correct. Now, there have been idiots on the left side of the aisle who have said, well, wait a minute, Republicans are celebrating the murder of these people. If you do not know the difference between a narco-terrorist, an individual who has participated in the trafficking of women and children and drugs to kill people for monetary profit into the United States, you can't tell the difference between that and a guy who said, Jesus Christ loves you, and even if you disagree with me, I think that you should get saved and also raise a family and go to church and support this country. You can't tell the difference between that? No wonder you're fired. Producer Nick?
I wonder if they could confirm, theoretically, that one of the boats were filled with explosives. The dispassionate, the second degree of killing with chemicals rather than physical weapons or explosives like we see in domestic terror incidents, if that would help people mentally justify what they're actually taking actions against. Because it's chemicals, we can disconnect ourselves from the product that they're actually bringing here. But if it was these actual weapons of war that they really are, then people would be fine with this.
I mean, I think you're dead on. This does bring us over to Eastern Europe, by the way, where signs of war, or at least the puffing up of chests, which is a little bit different than war, are coming into play. So in Eastern Europe, first of all, it appears that Belarus is joining in a push into neighboring countries alongside Russia. This is according to an open intelligence source post. That's not yours truly, offering his international analysis there. The open intel guy says, I say this because Belarus and Russia had war games today. But also in Poland, they've caught a drone flying around 2 government buildings. The bolstering comes in response to Russia's drone invasion of Polish airspace on the 9th and the 10th. Okay, so what's the actual analysis here? In the last month, there have been drones flown from Russian and Belarusian airspace that are suicide and attack drones into Polish airspace, into Lithuanian airspace, and into Romanian airspace. Now, I said this on the Timcast. Russia has long been known. Forget everything else about NATO, about this war. Push all of that away. Russia has consistently, since the Federation came into power after the Soviet Union's collapse, has consistently pushed foreign borders as far as they can go. And then, essentially, every couple of months, really, if you also include Japan, China, the Mongolia area in the 90s and the early aughts, they just fly craft as close as they can to antagonize every point of their borders. They're doing it with Alaska. It's just something Russia does. Now, does that mean it shouldn't be taken seriously? No, it should be taken seriously. Every country who has someone getting screwy on their borders, you should react to that. Again, you don't have to say, we need war with Russia right now in order to say, yeah, I mean, if Russia's getting screwy near your border, yeah, tell them to go take a Russian hike. Doesn't make sense. And this is one of the reasons why that the Prime Minister, Donald Tusk of Poland, sorry, I say that in accent because there are some intelligence analysts who called him the president today. Not the president. The Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has called for European aircraft and NATO to be stationed in Poland. The president of Poland has also signed a bill into law that allows NATO troops and NATO craft to be stationed in, Poland. In the last couple of hours, there has been a statement from the Polish state, the Polish State Protection. that Poland has also shot down a drone confirmed from Belarus. Now, before everyone gets out there and, starts hyperventilating, I'm going to make this clear. Poland is absolutely unequivocally our allies. First of all, Poland is a rather conservative-leaning country. Number two, their people are not all in favor of the European Union-style unfettered immigration. And lastly, number three, the king of Poland is Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. I kind of find that really hard to just brush off casually. That is true. Yes, according to the government of Poland, Jesus Christ is the king of Poland. It's pretty cool. Radio crew, I'm sorry. We've just about reached the end of your broadcast time with us. We're going to continue over on the live stream side of things. So head over there. We've got a lot more to get into because the news continues to break. We'll see you guys real soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, continuing over on the live stream. You're not going to go to war with Russia if you put troops in Poland. It's not how that works. I'm sorry, but at some point, you are going to have troops on the border with Russia. But we want a remilitarized zone. Yes, I too would love a massive half a country mile wide border. And I'd like it just to be a large valley that neither side can cross. But this is the real world. I'm so sorry. I am sorry. I'm not just being sarcastic there. I do believe that it is not going to ever be a thing in which the Russian Federation doesn't have troops on its eastern border, and the West, or at least several Eastern European countries who used to be a part of Russia, have troops on their Russia on their western border and Eastern European nations on their eastern border. And by the way, as soon as that is established, first of all, Polish sovereignty, I'm going to say something very controversial. Ukraine should in fact be a sovereign country, and it is a very corrupt nation that I do not like. I know, bold takes only here. Poland is not an overly corrupt country. It is also a sovereign country, and one that I'm rather fond of. By the way, I'm 0% Polish, just making that clear. I'm also not paid by PayPac. That's the Polish Action Committee. Did you like that? A little joke there? Okay. So in that matter, moving on to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is currently going through major anti-immigration rallies. With the exception of South Korea, which currently has large rallies, some against the United States, some against immigration, some pro-immigration, some against Chinese visas. There's a lot of stuff regarding South Korea, and we are going to wish that one a very friendly, however you say no thank you in South Korea, at least right now. But in the meantime, the rest of the world is going through some very serious growing pains regarding illegal immigration. And it just so happens that it appears Charlie Kirk may have touched off a final point of resistance. So, for example, both in Calgary, which is Calgary is up in Alberta, isn't it? Isn't it like the primary city up in Alberta? The only great Canadian province, eh? The rallies in support in vigil of Charlie Kirk were excellent. Here is a group in Calgary singing the Star Spangled Banner. Alberta is fantastic, and I absolutely would welcome it into the United States as the 51st state. I've said that before. I consistently maintain Alberta, or as I like to call it, Norther Indiana. Fantastic place full of fantastic people. In the UK, many hundreds of thousands. So the British media claimed it was like 100,000, which clearly this is not. It's more than 100,000. Some have also tried to claim this has been millions. I don't know if I believe millions and millions either. But there was a major, at least close to 1 million people in London to advocate for, first of all, in prayer for Charlie Kirk and his family, in solidarity with the English people, which again, you'll recall that flying the Cross of St. George has been met with the batons and the license demands of Britain's not finest. But Alas, here's some scenery from that major rally over the weekend. Filled with people. Filled with people. Now, the British media were very quick to report that there have been sightings of right-wing, far right-wing, possibly fascist protesters that have been throwing rocks at police and also probably throwing tea in the harbour and have been pushing police officers. Downright terrible behaviour. I'm sure that they found footage of that. I couldn't find footage of what they were claiming was occurring on the air, which is usually funny. You would think if you're the BBC and you're in London, as soon as you were finished, watching your wife date another man, you would go out into the street and you would film some of these right-wing agitators acting all mean and rough and tough. And instead it was a bunch of men and women praying and holding candles and, hoisting the Union Jack, which is fantastic. As a bloody Yank over here on this side of the Atlantic, that's pretty freaking fantastic. Now go the full step of the way and deport your problems. At least I think that's the best way to get rid of a lot of those particular issues. This will bring us over into the bonus tonus news. Producer Nick, you do look like you're itching to say something, though.
I wanted to point out a fact that I've really mulled over recently in viewing the contrast between these protests and George Floyd's protests that also had international resonance. One of the things that I have not seen anyone point out is an idea that really just gets to me. The difference between these protests not only not being not violent, George Floyd stood for ideology. Charlie Kirk stood for principles. The ideology of the left and resulting in violence, they're not set on moral principles, a backdrop of actually sharing a common theme within each other. And that's why it devolves so much into violence versus these protests. They start out as vigils and they return to vigils.
I live by these principles, and therefore we will leave each other alone and live by these same principles. Whereas over on the left, it's you must believe this or you're a threat to me and you must be eliminated kind of a thing. The principles which govern individuals rather than the ideology which kind of becomes a cult fascination. That's a good take. That's a good take. I think that's pretty on point. Well, this does bring us over to one underreported story from over the weekend. An officer in Chicago was involved in there was a traffic stop in which the suspect resisted and attempted to drive his vehicle into the arrest team. So anyway, here's the footage from CBS. We'll air their coverage here.
I'm Suzanne Lemonnier in Franklin Park, where this morning the Department of Homeland Security says an immigration officer shot and killed a man that they were trying to detain. Now, I want to show you the scene right here behind me. We're at the intersection of Grand Avenue and Emerson Street here in Franklin Park. You see those orange cones, those small ones, where there used to be evidence markers at those spots. There are about 5 orange cones right there at the scene. Now, on the ground there, right across from a silver Subaru that is wedged under that truck that you see right there. Our understanding is this car was being driven by a man that ICE was pursuing. In a statement, Department of Homeland Security says ICE officers were conducting a targeted law enforcement activity. During a vehicle stop, they say the suspect resisted and attempted to drive his vehicle into the arresting team, hitting an officer, then dragging him as he fled the scene. Fearing for his life, the statement says the officer discharged his firearm and the man was shot. DHS says the officer and the suspect immediately received medical treatment and they were transferred to a local hospital. Now, we're also told that the suspect was pronounced dead at that hospital. The officer has severe injuries and is in stable condition. In Franklin Park, Suzanne Lemonnier, CBS News, Chicago.
Now, I believe, and I'm just making sure that we have it loaded up, we do have this particular video of the event in case, which is really funny. You can hear the person from CBS going, well, allegedly, they're saying that probably kind of this happened. No, I mean, what I said in their statement is the truth. Do you know how we know this? I know this is crazy. We have these cool, metal and glass rectangles, and they can record things. It's really, really neat. And unless it's, footage of a UFO, it records things pretty clearly. So here you go. We actually have the footage. Amazing. CBS couldn't find this, but, we could.
Hi, yes. I'm a CDL truck driver, and a car hit my trailer because I think I tried to pull him over, and he crashed into my trailer.
So AKA checks out. You can also see, by the way, the clothing from the ICE officer who was dragged alongside. There's additional footage that's also emerged since then showing that particular moment, some photography as well. Again, it's before we are done, we will end up seeing, I believe, the National Guard in Chicago, at least a small contingent of it protecting immigration customs enforcement individuals. I do believe that will occur based on the evidence that has been provided. So those things said, there's two last things that I wanted to talk about. Two last things here. Number one is a really silly conspiracy that has continually popped up over the last couple of days about Charlie's assassination, which is that it's actually Israel that killed him. Just as a piece of advice to those out there on the Groyper side of the aisle, I'd like to just remind you that if you're going to claim something and you're going to say, here, look, this clip from last week where Charlie is saying this anti-Israel stuff and then they got him. I'm going to point out that if you use videos from 2023, it's currently 2025. So if you're going to claim that like this 2025 video proves it, 3 is a different number than 5. Kind of cool. Number 2, again, right now in Israel, the dude's receiving more honor than I think I've seen from a non-political individual of American and not Jewish origin in the state of Israel. And also, for that matter, there are a lot of right-wing pundits who are critical of the level of aid that Israel receives, or the perhaps alliance structure and how it currently stands between the United States and Israel. And I'm so sorry to break this to you, because as someone who knew Charlie and who talked about with him passionately, because we were both evangelicals, I'm just going to let you know that, yeah, Charlie believed in the Jewish state of Israel as is outlined eschatologically among like Baptist and a lot of non-denominationals, like pre-millennial tribulationists, to use the fancy Bible college terminology there. So, I mean, if you're going to get out there and like proclaim some really incredible theories, this is not how you win over a larger portion of the right, is just claiming that everything is secretly the Jews. I'd wish you the best of luck, but nah. So, moving on from that particular point, this brings us to the other side of the tut-tutters. And for an excellent debate on this, I would like to point over to, on the 5, Jessica Tarloff and Greg Gutfeld over on Fox News. I am going to keep my mouth on the more shut side of this particular clip and air it for your viewing or listening edification. Flip over to the bonus tonus side. That's where the clip is. There we go.
It wasn't school indoctrination. Kerry Lake went off on that. He was in an online apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College, which I don't think was changed.
I would just note the family said
but they
he
didn't
changed.
say when he changed.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we need more information before you
Charlie
smear.
Kirk at a dinner.
Before
we don't need more information.
Really?
Yes, we don't need it. What is interesting here is why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know.
What about
There's
Vance
absolutely
Pilcher?
no cognitive...
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked about?
You want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your. What about this? The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That is dead. For one.
I mean, Gutfeld makes quite the point. I would say the both sidesing of issues. And there's a lot of people like this that really worship the status quo, that think that the best thing to do in any situation is like fake being the bigger person by going, well, I believe that everyone should be better, like me, yours truly, who never gets involved in anything and simply votes for the status quo all the time. And they never actually look at the issue. They never actually take a stand. They never do anything at all. And then all of a sudden, they're Mitt Romney being castigated before the country and called the most evil thing ever, and Obama beats him in the election. So, just going to say, the whole both sides tut-tutting, no. Nah. So, on those particular notes, I do want to end the show on this one particular point, and that is about the shooter himself. When the first mugshot of Tyler was released, I made a tweet. And the tweet said, I believe, in fact, I'm going to pull it up because I want to make this perfectly clear. I do. I think that it's probably the best that I get this kind of word for word here. So when Tyler Robinson was arrested, I tweeted out, if this is the man, then hang him. Not a lethal injection, not laughing gas, hang him publicly. And I do believe that this individual who committed this crime should absolutely face consequences for his actions. I do. But from this point forward, I will no longer be advocating, in this instance, for an extreme, excruciating amount of pain. That was wrong. And the reason that I'm making that case right now is that on Sunday afternoon, I attended a vigil for Charlie in Noblesville, Indiana, organized by TPUSA and Life Church in Noblesville. And I was asked to give my testimony, and I did, and then I went and sat down, and two excellent pastors proceeded to get up and talk about the importance of how Christians are supposed to respond to this. And the senior pastor over at Life Church articulated quite clearly that the best possible outcome in this scenario is for, before Tyler Robinson faces justice, which he should face as a consequence for his actions, it would be a major blow to all evil which participated and cheered for the assassination of my friend. It would be the best thing possible that Tyler Robinson accepts Christ first. And that right now, if there is one individual that I believe, and this is what the senior pastor stated, if there's one individual that God wants to see the most at this moment in time, or who God deeply desires, not more or less than another person, but deeply desires to come to him, it is in fact Tyler Robinson, and here's why. What greater slap to the devil, what greater slap to sin and to hell than the moment from this killer who killed Charlie in anger and in foolish, sinful rage, that in the moment before he faces his consequences, he instead takes upon the gift of salvation that Charlie spent his entire life preaching. The thief on the cross is as Christ was being crucified for crimes he did not commit. Crimes that I was guilty of. Christ looked at the thief on the cross and told him, a thief who had committed those crimes, to repent. The thief did. He sought repentance from the Lord, and he still faced punishment. He still faced the consequences for his actions here on earth. But Christ said, "This day you will be with me in paradise." And so I hope that you will join me in also praying for Erica and for the kids and for this nation, that you will also join me in praying for the murderer. Because he deserves it? No, absolutely not. What he did was unforgivable. But Christ has forgiven me for the unforgivable. By the way, I'm not saying this from any kind of a moral high horse. I was One of the guys right there on X who calling for him to be hanged. Absolutely. And as a Christian, it's not how I should respond. Because Christ has called me to more. By the way, that's not meant to be well, you should do this, you should do that. Absolutely, absolutely not. I just thought that was necessary here at, kind of the end of the show when it's, you, me, and the floorboards, just to kind of outline that's weighed pretty heavy on my heart over the weekend. On a note, a very positive, joyous note, my inboxes on Facebook, Instagram, X, also over in the show's inbox have been pinging pretty frequently with messages of people who have accepted Christ, people in their family who they've been praying for a long time, who have accepted Christ, who've come to church, who have heard the gospel, and who have given their life to Christ. And that is excellent. There is no greater joy that I could possibly state, on air, off air, anywhere, than so many people coming to Christ as a direct result of this tragedy. And I'll end things here. If at the end of this, at the end of all of this, there are individuals who have given their lives to Christ, and this nation sees revival on a spiritual level that cannot come from the top down. No executive order, no law can be passed that revives this people. But if the desire for men to be good husbands and fathers, to lead their families, to take them to church, to do what is expected of them of duty and responsibility, to love sacrificially, then it absolutely will have been worth it despite the heartache, pain. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Charlie's widow, Erica. I think that she is absolutely correct. With that, I wish you a good evening, a good night's rest. We will be back tomorrow with more, same time, same place. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.